Dear friends, I am Shivaji Bhaskar, Assistant Professor of Russian in the School of Foreign Languages, IGNOU. I would like to welcome you all to this course, Basics of Russian Communication Skills Part 1. As you know that in the language learning, we have 4 components, that is reading, writing, listening and speaking. As we are going to start the basics of Russian here, I would like to take your attention to the basic fact that, as you know, that Russian is being spoken in many countries of the world, especially in Russia, CIS and Central Asia. And now the main objective of this course is that you will be able to understand the basics of Russian and you will be able to read and write Russian proficiently. As you know that in this program, we have included many interesting lessons like common Russian words, greetings in Russian, common Russian phrases, expressions, dialogues, texts, etc. And we have also included a vocabulary of more than 500 words so that when you start communicating in Russian, not only making simple sentences, but with the help of these vocabulary, you will be able to make your own sentences and communicate in Russian more efficiently. As the learning outcome after completion of this course would be that you will be able to comprehend Russian language in a better way. We have also included many lessons, as you already know that by completing these lessons, you will be able to introduce yourself in Russian, communicate with your friends in Russian, speak simple sentences in Russian, express yourself in typical places like at the airport or the hospital in Russian. And finally, you will be able to understand the Russian culture in a better way. Now, since we are going to start the basics of Russian, as in any other language, the basic notion of any language starts with its alphabet. So, likewise in Russian, we also have Russian alphabet, which is also known as Ruski alphabet. In this particular module, you will be learning about the Russian sound system, the phonetic sounds of Russian and different letters of the Russian alphabet. As our aim is that learning the basics of Russian alphabet, what you will achieve? You will be able to understand the basic structure and the sound of these letters of the Russian alphabet. In the Russian alphabet, as we know that there are 33 letters, out of which there are 21 consonants, 10 vowels and 2 signs or symbols. By doing so, you will be able to understand the role of intonation and stress signs in Russian speech and pronunciation. By learning to distinguish between different sounds, you will be able to identify different letters of Russian alphabet in a correct manner. So now let's see them one by one so that you understand them properly. But before we start learning about the Russian alphabet, we need to also learn about its origin so that we have a fair idea what kind of a language is it and what is the origin of this language. So, the Russian alphabet or the Ruski alphabet comes from the Russian language, which is known as Ruski Yazyk. Russian language is a Slavic language of Indo-European family. Russian language is closely related to Ukrainian and Belarusian with about 144 million native speakers in Russia, and it is spoken in around 30 other countries as well. Largely, it is spoken in the Commonwealth of Independent States and in Central Asia, but it is also spoken in many other countries of the world. So, by learning this language, you have the opportunity to work in several countries, and that is why learning Russian language is important today. Now, the Russian alphabet, as we say, it's derived from the Cyrillic alphabet, which was introduced into Russia. Those time it was called Kievan Rus at the time of the conversion to the Christianity, precisely in 988 AD. Cyrillic script is named in honor of the Byzantine scholar and monk Cyril, who together with his brother Methodius created the first Slavic writing system in the second half of the 9th century. And it was done in order to translate the Bible and other Christian texts into the Slavic languages. As now these days the standard Russian, which we known as Современный русский литературный язык, The origin of this standard well-known form of Russian is generally called the modern Russian literary language. It arose in the beginning of 18th century with the modernization reforms of the Russian state under the rule of Peter the Great. As you know, Peter the Great is the finest Russian Tsar from Russia who has modernized Russia, which we see today. Now, as we are speaking about the modernization, we also have many other people who have contributed greatly in the overall betterment of the knowledge creation or the institutional building in Russia. We will be talking about them in our later modules. Now, let us go to the Russian alphabet and learn these letters one by one. Dear learners, since we have learned about the origin and structure of the Russian language, now we will be discussing about the Russian alphabet with the help of these many letters which comprise together to make the Russian alphabet. Precisely, there are 33, out of which there are 21 consonants, 10 vowels and 2 signs. In this particular section, you will be learning about how to write different Russian letters and how to pronounce them in a correct manner. Let's listen to those letters of the Russian alphabet one by one. For clear understanding, we have given separate examples both in Russian and English so that you can distinguish between different sounds appropriately. Now, let's go to the letters one by one. So, as we have discussed, there are 33 letters in the Russian alphabet and there are 10 vowels, 21 consonants and 2 signs. Now, you can also see that these letters have been marked with different colors so that you can distinguish that whether they are consonants or the vowels or they are signs. Now, we will be discussing about these letters one by one. The first letter of the Russian alphabet is A. As you can see that how do we write letter A in capital and small. We have also used an English approximation so that you understand the probable pronunciation of this particular letter with the help of an English example, like we have used here an English example, father. So, the sound of A as in the word father resembles to the sound of Russian letter A. I would like to recommend you to repeat so that you also learn this particular sound of the letter A in efficient manner, and we will be also learning about certain Russian words which you will learn in order to understand the basic of the Russian language. So, we will be again repeating the first letter, letter A, as we have used an English approximation in father, and in Russian word we have used atlas, atlas, which means atlas. Now, we will go to the next letter. Letter is known as ba, ba. As we have used an English approximation, the word is bat. Here you can see that the sound of ba in bat is resembling to the sound of Russian letter ba, bat, ba. As we have also used another word from the Russian vocabulary is neba, neba. I would like to recommend you and suggest you to pay attention to the particular sound which is falling onto the letter, as we have in neba, neba, which means sky. Now, we will go to the next letter. The letter is ve, ve. Here we have used an English approximation which is wet, wet. Here the sound of letter ve is coming precisely as in the letter ve in English approximation word wet. Accordingly, we have also used a Russian word vesna, vesna, which means spring season. In this particular example, you can pay attention that how the sound of ve is coming out when we are using the word vesna, where we have used the letter ve. Now, I would like to recommend you all, while we are learning these new letters of the Russian alphabet, you must write these letters separately in English and separately in Russian. Make your own vocabulary of words which we have used here in the English approximation or in the Russian, so that while learning new letters of the Russian alphabet, you will be learning about certain examples which are from English or from Russian where these letters have been used, as well as since we have given the meaning of such words which are used in Russian in English as well, so that after the module you will have your own vocabulary of at least 33 new words. So, we will be going to the next letter now. The next letter is letter G. G. As we have used letter G in English approximation in the word argue. Argue. So, why we are saying that they are approximate? Because we cannot have exactly the same pronunciation or the phonetical equivalent in English as of Russian. So, that is why we are saying English approximation of such words, such letters in words of English, like we have used here letter G in argue. Now, we have another Russian word Gorod, Gorod, which means city. Here you can pay attention that how the letter G is being pronounced in the word Gorod, which means city. Alright, now we will go to the next letter. The next letter is, you can see that known as letter D. And as we have used all style where you can see that letters are being written in the capital and small, I would also like to recommend you all to complete this exercise as we have done, so that you also know that how to write these all letters in capital and small. Now, we will be discussing about their sound. Alright. So, letter D, as we have used an English approximation D in as if do in the letter D, which is we have used in the word English word do. And now, we will discuss the sound of letter D as in the Russian word dom, dom, which means house. Dear learners, while learning a foreign language, especially Russian language, there are certain concepts which we need to be very clear about, that which makes the entire sound system precise and clear, which is in the case of Russian is the intonation. In intonation in Russian language, we have certain style, especially the stress sign, which always falls into the vowel. For example, in the word dom, the sound of O is higher than the rest of the letters. Why? Because it is as per the rule of the Russian language that whenever there is a stress, it will always fall into a vowel and never on a consonant. So, you also need to keep this fact into your mind, so that whenever you are exercising or trying these new words or letters, you must pay attention to that particular word where the udareni or the stress is falling. Alright, so let us go to the next letter. The next letter is Ye. Ye. Here you can see that how the letter Ye is being written in capital and small, and here we have given an English approximation in a word pay. So, the sound of Ye as if in the letter A in the word pay, and we have used the Russian word so that you understand it clearly in pevets, pevets, which means singer. Right, now let us go to the next letter. The next letter is very interesting. As you can see, it is known as yo, yo. As we have seen the certain English word where we find the approximations. In this case, we have the English word audio, yo as if in audio. We have used the Russian word yolka, yolka, where you can see the stress is on yo because it is also a vowel. That is why Yolka. The sound of yo is coming very strongly and it is known as Christmas tree. Next letter is known as R. R. Again, very interesting letter of the Russian alphabet, very peculiar, and we strongly recommend our learners to pay attention to certain letters which are very peculiar. In the case of Russian as well, you have letter yo, letter R, and many more which are coming in the next slides. Here you can see how do we write letter R in capital and small. The letter R can be practiced with an English word approximation as we use R in the word pleasure, pleasure. And in Russian we have used another example like zhuk, zhuk. You pay attention to the pronunciation which I am doing here, so that you master this particular sound. The letter is R in the Russian word zhuk, which means beetle. Alright, now we will go to the next letter, letter Z. The previous letter was R and this one is Z. There is a very strong deviation of the sound between both the letters. So, many times we have seen that while pronouncing, most of our students are committing a mistake. In place of Z, they are writing Z, and in place of Z, they are writing Z. So, you need not to be confused about it. Both the letters have very peculiar sounds. So, in this case also you must learn precisely how to pronounce them properly. So, now we have the letter Z. Z. The English approximation of this sound can be found in this word as in zoo, zoo. A sample Russian word which we have used so that you understand this particular sound clearly as in zont, zont, which means umbrella. The next letter is E. We have E and we have E kratki, which is a small e like we have in Hindi, but in Russian what is the purpose do they serve? Both have different sounds. So, we have E, and how do we find the approximation of this sound in English word? For example, in the word sweet, and we have used the same sound which you can find in the word iris, iris, which means iris, the iris flower as we see. So, now we are going to the next sound. Next letter is E kratki, E kratki. The basic difference between E and E kratki is that E is a vowel whereas E kratki is a consonant. Second, that the sound of E kratki is smaller, and that is why while pronouncing any word which has E kratki becomes lighter. For example, in the word yield, or in the Russian sample word we have used yogurt, yogurt. So, both the sounds are different as you can compare both E and E. So, one is bigger and another one is smaller. Now, let us go to the next letter. The letter's name is Ka, Ka. An English approximation we have used so that you understand it properly is as if Ka in milk, milk. And in Russian sample word we have used the letter Ka in word kniga, kniga, which means book. Now, we will go to the next letter. The letter's name is L, L. You can again pay attention to how these letters are written in capital and small, and you need to continue this process in each and every letter which we are learning here. Please do write in your notebook and pronounce. Now, the letter L, as we have used the example of English L in pill, and in Russian we have used the word Luna, Luna, which means moon. Now we'll go to the next letter. The letter's name is M. M. As we have used an English approximation, the word is mute. Mute. A sample Russian word which we have used here is muila. Muila, which means so. Now we will go to the next letter. As you can see that with the help of certain pictures, we also trying to make you understand that how these different letters in the form of a word, how do we use so that you comprehend it properly. So while learning these different letters of the Russian alphabet, you have 2 or 3 different tasks. The first one is to understand the phonetic sound of the particular letter while using the English approximation. Second, you need to identify the sound in a particular word of Russian as we have seen, and finally remember it with the help of the pictures we have used so that you comprehend it properly. Now we'll see how this letter, the name of the letter is N. How do we pronounce it properly? We have another English word for approximation, we will use it N as in noon. Sample Russian word we have here nose, nose, which means nose. We will go to the next letter now. The letter's name is O. O. The English approximation of letter O we can find in English word chore, chore. So pay attention to the particular letter. In this case we have O, and since it is a vowel, that is why the stress sign is also falling onto the letter O. And we have another Russian example with us. It is Oblaka, Oblaka, which means cloud. Alright, now we will learn about more such letters of the Russian alphabet. Here you can see we have another letter of the Russian alphabet. The name of the letter is Pe. Pe. So I would like to recommend our learners to learn all these letters by heart and not to confuse them with the letter of the English alphabet and any other sound, because they are very peculiar and particular sounds of their own language, and once you learn them properly by heart, you will never make a mistake while learning these particular letters, later words and sentences, and you will be able to pen down your thoughts properly and speak to Russians and speak Russian in a very efficient manner. So that is why, since this is the foundation of the entire course, you need to pay absolute attention to these concepts. So we have certain concepts which we have learned so far. The first one is how to identify different letters of the Russian alphabet, whether they are vowels, consonants or sign or symbols. Then whether these letters, if they are vowels, stress is falling and how the pronunciation is coming up. If they are consonants, what kind of role do they play in the formation of a word. And finally, all the vocabularies which we are also learning in continuation with the help of these examples are adding up to our own knowledge. Alright, so this time we have this new example with us. The letter's name is, as we have seen, is Pe. The English approximation which we have used here to understand it properly is pool, and the Russian sample word which we have used so that we understand it properly is Privyet. Privyet, which means hello. So in Russian, whenever you are communicating with friends, families or people from Russia, CIS or Central Asia, the first expression of greetings is Privyet, which means hello. Alright, now we will go to the next letter. Alright, the next letter of the Russian alphabet which we have here is known as R. Please pay attention when I am pronouncing the sound of this particular letter R, R, and we have used the English approximation word so that you understand it properly as R in run. A Russian sample word which we have used here so that you understand it clearly is Raduga, which means rainbow. Now, let us go to the next letter. The letter is known as S, S, as we have used in English approximation word S in soup, soup. A sample Russian word which we have used here so that you understand it properly is Sabaka, Sabaka, which means dog. Alright, now the next letter is Te, Te. Here you please pay attention that how the letter Te is being written in capital and small, and in Russian we also have the printing style and written style. So that is why that will also be discussing in the next modules, and right now we will be discussing about the sound of these particular letters. So in this letter we have the letter Te, and English approximation we have used so that we understand it properly is Te in tool. A sample Russian word so that we understand it properly is taxi, taxi, which means taxi. Alright, the next letter which we are going to learn is known as U, U, an English approximation word we have used so that you understand the sound of this particular letter. U is pool, pool. A sample Russian word we have used here so that you understand it properly is U in utka, utka, which means duck. So I hope that you must be writing all these different letters and marking them as whether they are vowels, consonants or sign symbols, as well as writing all the letters with the help of these approximation of English words as well as sample Russian words along with their meaning in English, so that you build up your own vocabulary. Alright, so now we will be learning this letter which is very interesting, known as F, F. An English approximation which we have used here so that you understand the sound of this letter properly is few, few. A sample Russian word where we have used the letter F in a word so that you identify the sound properly is F in flag, flag, which means flag. Alright, so we will go to the next letter now. The letter is known as H, H. An English approximation so that we understand it clearly is the word Khan, where we have used the letter K, or we have a sample Russian word with us where we have used the letter K in the word Khlyeb, Khlyeb, which means bread. Alright, the next letter, another very interesting letter which is found in Russian alphabet is known as Ts, Ts. Please pay attention when I am pronouncing the particular and a peculiar sound of the letter. You also need to practice as I am pronouncing. The letter's name is Ts, Ts. As we have used an English approximation Tsar, Tsar, and in sample Russian word we have used Tsar or Tsar, and you will find it interesting that the Russian word Tsar, which we use in English as Tsar, is from Caesar. So it has a connection with many other languages of the world, and finally this particular word is very popular and has been used in the English vocabulary as well as Tsar. Alright, now we will go to the next letter. So the letter's name is Ch, as we have used in English approximation church. And how do we pronounce them? In with the help of Russian word chai, chai, which means tea. The next letter is sh. An English approximation which we have used here so that you understand it properly as in English word push, sh in push. And a sample Russian word which we have used here is chef, chef, which means boss. So, not to be confused with the English word chef, which means qualified cook, but chef means boss in Russian. So, I would like to recommend my learners that they must pay attention to certain words which might confuse you in later stages. That is why paying attention right now would help you in a greater manner. Alright, so the next letter here we have is sh, sh. So, there is a basic difference between the sound of sh and sh. So, how do we pronounce the letter sh is with the help of English approximation. Letter sh can be mastered with the word as in shoes, shoes. And a sample Russian word here we have used is sheath, which means shield. Alright, so now the interesting part of the Russian alphabet is that now we are going to introduce you to these signs. As these signs doesn't make much change into the overall meaning or the sound of the word, but they do have a role to play, as we have this letter which is known as Fyodor or the heart sign as we say. It has no sound. It is only used to emphasize the sound of the preceding consonant and adds a small pause before the next syllable. For example, in the case we have used the word padyezd, padyezd. That is why after padyezd we have a smaller pause here. And since pronunciation in English cannot be, because it doesn't have its own sound, that is why it has been left blank. A sample Russian word so that you can also understand how and which kind of words do we have where we have these particular letter, as in obyektив, which means lens. Now we will go to the next letter, another very interesting letter of the Russian alphabet which has no similar sound in any other language, as we have the letter is known as uy, uy. How do we master it? With the approximation as in B, but in Russian we have the word riba, riba. How do we pronounce it? Riba, uy. That is why it is a vowel, that is why the stress is falling onto it, and the pronunciation is ruiba, which means fish in Russian. Alright, so the next letter is another sign, as we have two signs in Russian, the hard sign which we have just learned, and now this is called the soft sign or the myakkий znak. Soft sign, it doesn't have its sound, it softens the preceding consonants. For example, in the case of the Russian word ruble, ruble doesn't have its own sound, that is why the pronunciation in English has been left blank. But do we have a word in Russian? Yes, it is kon, kon, which means horse. Now another vowel of the Russian letter in the alphabet we have a. The English approximation here we have the word met, and sample Russian word we have ekran, which means screen. Now the next letter is, which we are going to learn, is U. Another interesting letter of the Russian alphabet, U. English approximation we have used here is use, and sample Russian word so that you understand it properly is Jupiter, Jupiter, which means Jupiter planet. And finally the last one of the Russian alphabet is another very interesting letter known as Ya, a vowel. And how do we pronounce it? With the help of English approximation word as in yarn, and with the help of sample Russian word we have Ya in yablaka, which means apple. So learners, now we are going to summarize what do we have learned here. In this particular module you have learned about the origin of the Russian language, its structure, Then you have also learned about the Russian alphabet, its letter in a detailed manner. We have also seen that how these letters, whether they are consonants, vowels or signs or symbols. Now in the next module, you will also be learning about the Russian phonetics, and you will be introduced to vowels and consonants separately so that you learn Russian language in a correct and detailed manner. Thank you.